Okay, Nietzsche, part one. Good. So, like usual, we'll do our little poll to see how you guys stomached Nietzsche. So, remember 10, it was amazing. 1, it was horrible. Any tens for Nietzsche? Put your hand. I'm looking at you right now. No tens. Okay. 9. Oh, Castaneda. Okay. Delmas. See, I told you there will be super lovers, right? And then we'll see super haters. You'll see. 8. Okay. 7. 6. 5. All right, here come the haters. 4, 3, 2, 1. I see -1 from Colon. Okay, Colon, you're the first one. Go ahead. First hater. Tell us what happened, Colon.
I mean, I just feel like he's attacking like all the foundations of Christianity.
Yes, that bothered
Like
you?
although it is true that although that it is true that you can't like there's a lot of restrictions, but I feel like he's like exaggerating all of it. Like it's not that serious the way he's putting it.
Okay, great. Yes.
That's what I think.
Um, well, to a certain degree, it depends on the brand of Christianity you're in, right? Some Christianity really
Yeah.
fits, right? What Nietzsche is talking about. He's not in some versions of Christianity. He's not exaggerating. But you're right. Christianity has a broad spectrum, right? So he's not really. He can't say all of Christianity is like that. And he is over the top. You're right. And remember, I told you there's a reason for that, right? He's provocative. He wants to shock. He's the stand-up comedian, right? He's trying to poke at you. So you're really to get you started thinking, right? If he was just being all politically correct, you'd be like, okay, you do you, I do me, right? But because he's hitting you and poking you, now you want to respond. You see what I'm saying? Who am I talking to? I forgot. Cologne. Yes, where are you, Cologne?
Yeah.
Right. You see what I mean? So if he stayed all nice and politically correct, you wouldn't react and you wouldn't start thinking. You see what I'm saying? So he's kind of doing it on purpose. Do you see his technique?
Yeah, I see it.
He's being intentionally offensive, right? So that we get what's the word? What's the word when you get provoked or offended, right? And because we get provoked, this is now the moment we're going to start thinking. If we're not provoked, we just go back to Netflix, right? Who cares? But if we're provoked, then we have passion, we have rage, and now we want to prove back, right? We want to hit back. And that's what Nietzsche wants. He wants to get a reaction. He wants to get a thinking reaction, right? So that's why he's exaggerating, he's over the top, and he knows it, right? Core, you want to add something? Go ahead.
I actually agreed with how he said that Christianity is very restricting. And I'm not Christian myself, but even in my religion, it can be restricting because a lot of people tend to bring their spiritual beliefs into their political ones, and they try to dictate their spiritual beliefs over everyone else's. And I think that's when you know that your religion is a risk because you cannot go to that extent.
Okay, yes, we feel, I mean, Christianity is one of the dominant religions, right, of this country, and we are feeling the clamp, right? Politically, at least, right? We are feeling that there is some rigidity, right, in Christianity, at least the way it's practiced in this country. And there are oppressive forms of Christianity that are budding right now throughout the land, right? And we're feeling this as a nation politically, definitely, right? I agree with you that Christianity, in a way, what Nietzsche is saying, I think, is very important to listen to as American Christians, right? We need to listen to this. This is for us. Very good. Um, Great, excellent. Let's talk to the lovers a little bit. I think I saw there was Delmas, Ahmad. I forgot who was the first lover. There was one that was even higher. Who was it? Who gave a 9 to Nietzsche? I forgot. Put your hand in the screen. Was it Delmas? Okay, okay. Delmas, Ahmad. You're the ones I remember. Who else? Was there anybody else on the 9-10 that you want to talk? Put your hand. Okay, let's hear you. Delmas and then Ahmad. Tell us why you love Nietzsche so much.
Okay. Um, well, it was good to see how, especially because before we talked about how he had some faith right before, but then something happened in between, and you read a book and something changed, and now you get to see this radical view, right? This transformation from someone who used to pursue God, but then what happened, right? And then now it's just completely different. And it's a good, I suppose, challenge for anyone who would be religious to sort of go through and read about and learn about what other people view of what you may believe, and different, whatever it might be, right? So learning about that really clarifies and helps you understand other people even better. So that helped me understand Nietzsche a little bit, a little bit more better.
Great. So you took it like encounter with a person, right? A person who's been through something, and you could feel the pain, right, behind the. Can't talk today. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great teaching like this. You're sensing the pain behind the resentment, behind the even the arrogance, right? There's
Right,
a lot of arrogance in Nietzsche, but it's on purpose. It's a show, right? You remember, Nietzsche is a happening. Nietzsche is a show, on purpose, right? He's purposefully putting on these characters, right? In order to trigger us, right? So you're sensing the man behind the philosopher. I appreciate that. Ahmad, conclude us.
I found his sarcasm through the roof, and um, it was very funny, but at the same time, it was penetrating, and he almost acted like a mirror for me and showed people their own showed the Christians their contradictions.
Yes.
Um, a line that one thing that I found, one of the contradictions was how he showed that those very people who are rooting for the repressions of the passion are themselves struggling to control them, yet they're projecting that onto everyone else, that the right way to live is to completely cut yourself off from the passions, which is actually the root of life itself. Without it, you wouldn't even exist.
Right. Excellent, right? So you're appreciating the wit and the depth, right? Nietzsche is he's witty, but there is a seriousness to his wit, right? Which you're catching on really nicely. Okay, good. Well done. All right, Karuchi, yes. Would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think, and I didn't read this with enough fidelity. I just browsed through it, and the little that I know, I think one of the most important points that he's making is towards the institutions of religion, and how those are very much man manufactured and man governed. And that's where all these contradictions exist, right? So you have all these political goals that are done in the name of faith and religion, and a lot of it is completely out of line with the fundamental beliefs that each religion has. So there's that kind of, and there's hypocrisy within those own institutions. And certainly myself being a Catholic Christian, we could talk for hours about some of those hypocrisies, but and what has gone on. So I think that to me is the big thing. Like, individual spirituality and faith and application and how you live it is one thing. But then, just like anything else, when you have the church and all of these institutions that are trying to control and govern from a moral place, it's easy to get twisted out of what the fundamental faith and religion teaches. And I think that was the screaming obvious thing for me.
Yes, excellent. You're right, right? It's Nietzsche is really targeting Christianity as it has become. And today, what we're going to do is take a shortcut. Can't talk today. Uh, and going to see the original text of Christianity, right? We're going to take a look actually at the teachings in the Gospels and see that actually what Nietzsche is criticizing doesn't stem from there. Something happened over time which made Christianity what it is today. And that is what Nietzsche is criticizing. So we're going to see. Okay, let's get in the text because this is there's a lot to cover today. So main idea, right? I'm going to summarize and then we'll go and look at a few quotes, right? It's what I mentioned last time, right? The first criticism of Nietzsche, remember there are two. First one, Christianity is nihilistic. Second one, Christianity is delusional. Next time we'll do the delusional. Today we do the nihilistic. Nihilistic simply means against life, anti-life. And so when we look at Christianity, right, there is indeed a tendency, right, not only to despise life, right? But to also despise that part of us which is pulled towards life. Okay, let me say that again. Not only is there in Christianity the tendency to despise the here and the now, the world, right? And you see even the way it's spoken, right? There's the world and there's us, the Christians, right? The world over here, the flesh over here, right? The earthly over here, and then the saved ones, right? So there is really a tendency in Christianity as a whole, I believe, to despise the world, to despise the body, to despise the material realm that we inhabit, right, as human beings. And going with this is this kind of distrust of what Nietzsche calls the passions, right? So I'm going to write this here in the chat. The passions, right? So what is a passion? A passion is simply something in you which pulls you towards life, right? And I'm going to make a list of the passions and then how they have been demonized by Christianity. But a passion is something in you which is bursting to get into life, right? Bursting to come out, bursting to enter life, right? One of the biggest passions, right, is, for example, desire, right? You desire, or whether it's a desire for money, desire for honor, desire for a relationship, right? This is the passions. Anything in you which has to have something in the world, that's a passion, right? You can't resist it. It's a powerful urge towards something outside of yourself. That's a passion. Let me write the definition, right? A passion is, what is a passion? Passion is a powerful urge within yourself for something in the world, right? So that it can be a passion for food, it can be a passion for a relationship, it can be a passion to destroy, it can be a passion to take, right, something that is out there which is not yet yours, right? So anything, right, that is pulling us outside of ourselves towards an object in the world is a passion. And usually passions are things that we can barely resist, right? So because there's this thing in us which pulls us towards the world, and because the world is bad, therefore in Christianity we know that the passions will also be bad, right? And so there has been a systematic demonization of human desire in the Christian church. And these are summarized in the 7 mortal sins, which are all sins of the passions, which are all demonization of human desire, of an aspect of human desire, right? So let me repeat that, right? A passion is a powerful urge. It's a powerful, another way to put it is a powerful desire for an object in the world, right? It can be, this object can be a human being. It can be food. It can be possessions. It can be honor, right? Anything that you crave with unlimited desire. This is a passion, right? It's a powerful desire. It's not just, oh, I think I'm going to watch a movie tonight. No, it's like, I have to do this, right? So, okay. So the desires, human desire, human passion, because it takes us into the world, because it's our way of penetrating the world, of course, will also be demonized by the church, right, as gateways into the world, right? And so we have the 7 mortal sins. Can anyone give me the names of the 7 mortal sins in Christianity? Karuchi.
Pride, lust, gluttony, sloth, envy, rage, I think, or wrath. Sorry, wrath. I don't know how many was that. 5.
6.
That was 6. Greed. Is it greed? The last one.
I
Greed.
think so, yeah.
Oh, pride maybe.
Oh, pride.
Pride.
You said it already.
Pride, lust, gluttony, sloth, envy, wrath.
You're good? Yep,
Yeah.
that's it. Okay, great. Now notice how these 7 sins are actually 7 desires, right? Look at them, right? You have the sin of desire. The sin of pride. What is pride? Pride is overwhelming desire for honor, right? Overwhelming desire for recognition. Something in the world, right, that will recognize us. That's the first desire, fundamental human desire. Lust, right? This is a sexual desire, right? Fundamental urge in us, right? To find somebody, right? Gluttony, fundamental desire for food. Sloth, fundamental desire for rest. Envy, fundamental desire for everything else. Wrath, fundamental desire to destroy when we're angry, right? And greed. Greed sounds like envy. Maybe there's, I wonder if we have them right. I mean, you're getting the idea, whether we have the 7 sins right or not. Are you seeing, okay, I want you to be very clear, right? Are you seeing how the church has taken 7 fundamental desires and turned them into sins? Are you seeing this? Put your hand in the screen, right? 7 mortal sins are simply 7 human desires, fundamental passions that bring you into the world. The church has taken those and made them into the 7 mortal sins. Why? Because life is corrupt and should be avoided. And these passions are pushing you into life. They're propelling you into life, but life must be avoided at all cost in the Christian mindset, according to Nietzsche, right? Because life is not what matters. Life is sinful. Life is corrupt. Life is where the prince of the world resides, right? Life is the world. And so there, and this is undeniable. In every version of Christianity, you have some version of this hatred of the world, right? Even in the very nice versions of Christianity, you still have this distinction, us and them, the world that we should avoid, right? So Nietzsche is saying this is nihilistic. Why is Christianity putting these walls between us and life? Why can't we just enter life? Why should we be so afraid to be drawn into life's embrace, right? That's what Nietzsche is asking, right? And he's saying, you know, the church in a way has set these barriers between us and life. Kind of like I was telling you with the movie Devil's Advocate, right? God creates pleasure and then he forbids us to take pleasure in the pleasures he created, right? So that's the issue here. And I think to a very great degree, he is right? Even today, across the board, any denomination of Christianity has some version of this distrust of life. And we saw, by the way, remember Job? Same idea, right? Job is so fenced in when God gets to him. He's so fenced in and afraid of really living. Even his children have a party, he's scared what might happen during that party, right? And so remember how God kind of explodes Job's cocoon, right? And propels him into life, into the majestic, terrifying yet beautiful, right, circle of life. Nietzsche in many ways is the mentality of Nietzsche is very close to the mentality of the author of the book of Job, right? We have very similar philosophies. Nietzsche likewise is telling us, stop seeing everything as forbidden. Enter, right? Embrace, live life to the fullest. Don't be afraid of pain. Don't be afraid of pleasure. Live, right? That's really the invitation that he's giving us behind this very resentful critique, right, of Christianity. So let's look briefly at a couple quotes, and then I'm going to start to respond to Nietzsche, because we must also respond. He is waiting for our response. Okay, I'm on page, I don't know, to be honest. There it is. Okay, luck, page 52. Okay, just gonna skim through, right? This is just everything I've just said, right? Look at the title, Morality as Anti-Nature. Everybody with me? Put your hand in the screen. Okay, morality as anti-nature, right? Already we know what he's gonna say, right? Again, Christian morality going against life, anti-life, that's what he's saying. And now here he says this, right? Beginning, there's a time with all passions when they're merely fatalities. So he admits, when your passions master you, when they're too much, yes, they lead to death. So in a way, both Nietzsche and Christianity agree that passion, human desire, if it is not controlled, can lead you into a complete disaster, right? We know when we're overcome with one passion that we will do anything, right? And end up killing ourselves. So he agrees, right? He says that they can drag their victim down and so forth. And so then he continues, formerly, one made war on passion. And now he's saying this is one of the ways we've dealt with passion. So notice how he's saying this, right? Our passions, he acknowledges, are very powerful. they can lead us to our own death if we do not know how to navigate. So he admits that passion, the human desire, is like a force of nature, like a storm. I don't know if any of you have fallen in love at the wrong time with the wrong person when you were, you know what I'm saying? And you're like, you can't control it. It's a force of nature, right? You have no control over, or and some of us get angry in that way. That's why some of us choose not to get angry, because if we do get angry, it's like nothing survives, right? So we know, some of us, how powerful this force of passion is within us. And Nietzsche's acknowledged it's very powerful, right? And it's so powerful, if we don't know how to navigate it, we can die, we can kill, right? So he agrees with Christianity, but then he says Christianity went the wrong path when it says we're just going to cut out all the passions, right? Instead of simply learning to cultivate our passions, right? We're going to see the two ways. So Christianity, let me say it again, chooses to just cut all the passions off, right? Nietzsche is going to opt towards a more artistic approach, we're going to see, which is the cultivation of passion. Imagine, I think, the best way to see this is to imagine a garden, nature, right? Nature left by itself is complete chaos. Everything's growing everywhere in all directions, right? It's like a gardener comes to this crazy, chaotic garden and says, this is terrible. Let's just cut everything off, right? Mows off the whole garden, nothing left. Now we have peace and quiet. Yes, but no garden, right? And Nietzsche would say, no, don't mow off the garden, just cultivate, trim, right, arrange, and you can still have a garden which is beautiful. That is how Nietzsche is talking about how we should deal with our passions. Instead of mowing them off, let's learn to cultivate them. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the end when we read the rest. Good. You can read the rest. It says, now, what I want to do briefly before I go into Nietzsche's cultivation of the passions, I want to respond from the perspective of Christianity to what Nietzsche is saying, this accusation of Christianity being anti-life. And of course, what I'm going to do is go back to the original texts of Christianity, the original teachings, which are found in the Gospels, right? The Gospels are the 4 stories about, so these are 4 books in the Christian Bible, right? Which talk about the teachings and the life of Jesus, right? So there's 4 different books, each giving a different perspective, right? And so these are the Gospels, right? Gospel, of course, in the Greek. Is gospel a Greek word? Now I'm having no, it's English. But in the Greek, evangelion, right, means simply good news. So these are the original books of Christianity, 4 different accounts of the life and teachings of Jesus. So interestingly, when we go to these 4 books, the criticism of Nietzsche does not hold anymore. And I'm going to show you a couple stories where you can get a glimpse into the mindset of Jesus, right? And see how radically different this mindset is from the way Christianity is practiced today. So we're going to ask ourselves what went wrong. When did Christianity start to turn and become what it is today, which is the opposite I'm going to show. So I'm going to talk about that. Okay. Teachings of Jesus, I'm going to just give you one story which will summarize everything. This is in the Gospel of John, in the book of John. First miracle. Anybody remember? First miracle Jesus does in the book of John. Very interesting story, not found in the other Gospels. Carucci, go ahead.
Was that the wedding at Cana?
Yep. Yeah. What does he do?
So they ran out of wine at the wedding, and Jesus' mom was there, and she said to someone, ask my son what to do about it, and he turned all of the water they had into wine.
Okay, very interesting story, right? This is, by the way, connections between this story and the Greek god Dionysos, god of wine, right? There are a lot of connections. I don't know why. I'd have to look into it, but there are a lot of connections in the way that the book of John describes Jesus and the wine god of Dionysos. And in fact, what's interesting, a lot of stories that are similar. between the two figures, right? The wine god, if you remember, like, just a few words on Dionysus, right? For those who do not know, this is the Greek god, right? Of wine, of sex, of nature, of wildness. I mean, this is the God almost that we meet in the book of Job, right? Similar. And so we have this Greek God, which the author of the book of John is familiar with, right? Because if you recall, the book of John is written by somebody who's very familiar with Greek culture because it's written in a very beautiful literary Greek. So the person writing is well acquainted with Greek culture. So connections between Jesus and Dionysus. Nietzsche will make that connection also. When you read the later texts of Nietzsche, he's exploring the figure of Jesus. He's actually intrigued and attracted to Jesus. It's interesting. He hates Christianity, but he is attracted to Jesus. And he merges the two. He tends to merge Dionysus and Jesus in many of his writings. He sees them as one and the same. It's interesting. Anyways, going back to the first miracle. So remember, we talked about Christianity, hating life, being against all human desire. What do we have in the first miracle? We have Jesus hanging out in a wedding, celebration of human sexuality, right? And they run out of wine. And his mother is like, Jesus, I know you. You're my son. Won't you do something about this? And Jesus is hesitating, right? He doesn't feel ready. But she kind of pushes, right? And he ends up turning, well, basically they ran out of wine, which is a catastrophe. So he goes to the steward and he says, well, what do you have? You don't have wine, what do you have? And he says, we have water. Huge quantities of water used to bathe for purification. And so he says, okay, bring the water to the table and start pouring. And so they're like, okay. So they go with jars of water used to bathe and purify, start pouring, and out comes the wine, right? So now we have Jesus who enjoys a good glass of wine, good company. He is in a wedding, celebration of human sexuality. What is this telling you already before he opens his mouth? What does this tell you about the person of Jesus? What would you say? What kind of person is he? Karachi, you want to answer that?
Yeah, but I was also going to add to, I might be mistaken, wasn't the wine that was poured out considered to be like of the best vintage also? Like it was like people were blown away. It was like, holy cow, this is amazing.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what he's saying is, you know, or at least what we're meant to understand, or at least the figure that Jesus is in this story is one who is there to engage life, engage people, engage, you know, the things in life that are worth celebrating, the joys that all of these things bring us. Yeah, he was part of the party, no pun intended.
It was, right? I had a friend who told me Jesus was Dominican. He was always hanging out at parties. In fact, he was criticized for being too much of a party grower, right? He was called a glutton. He was called a reveler, right? People would criticize him for being too much of a party goer, right? Of a party guy. And so you already get the sense, right, that this is somebody who enjoys life, who likes to be in good company, who enjoys the company of women, who enjoys the company of men, who enjoys nice food, nice drink, right? And ultimately, when he begins to teach, right, when he begins to encounter different people on his path, right, one of the key things that he is constantly responding to is human desire. People come to him not because they want to learn something deep about the secrets of the universe. They come to him with a desire. Most encounters that you have in the Gospels between human beings and Jesus are encounters where the human being is drawn to Jesus because of a desire. He's not drawn to Jesus to get some wisdom or to have a nice guru or to learn transcendental meditation. No. These people are drawn to Jesus because they have a heavy heart. They have a burning desire, and Jesus systematically responds. And so what we're learning as we read these stories, at least in the early Christianity, is that God is a God who responds to human desire. And desire is one of the paths to God, right? In other words, human desire, far from being sinful or corrupt or leading us away from God or pushing us into the world, human desire is a spiritual path. which can lead you to God, right? And so we see this in the text, such a powerful reversal of what we learn here through the Nietzschean critique, where human desire, actually the human passions, the human desire is what is going to draw you closer to God. We saw this with Job, right? Until Job became fully human, he couldn't be fully spiritual. We have the same lesson in the Gospels. Until we become fully human and embrace our desires and bring them, right, offer them to God, right, we cannot reach full spirituality. As long as we're repressing our desires, we cannot get to the highest levels of spirituality. Spirituality is mediated through human desire. Human desire is the path. Carucci.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's beautiful the way that you said that, because I really do. I mean, I don't want to turn this into something more, but I do believe that if you read the gospel, what's in there is so much more than the way people who claim to be Christian are living. But there's a good movie called Risen. I don't know if anybody's seen it. It's a fictional story of a Roman centurion who was mandated by Pontius Pilate to find the body of the risen Jesus Christ. And the reason why is because he didn't want them Christians to celebrate that their prophecy came true.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a scene, and I don't want to ruin it for everybody if you're going to watch it, but there's a scene where, as he's exacerbated, the Roman centurion shares with someone, what he would he just wants to end all of this work and toiling, and he just wants to go home, raise his family in his garden, tend to his land, eat his, the fruits of his labor, and raise his goats and just enjoy life. And later on, he encounters Christ himself on earth, and Christ says to him, "Tell me what troubles you." And then the guy is dumbfounded, and Christ answers him with the exact words that he had said earlier in the movie. "Do you desire to go home and be with your family and enjoy your life?" And, I think that it's a beautiful scene in the movie, but it exemplifies what you were talking about, because he does understand, like, these are the things that make you happy. And if you're happy, then there will be love. And if I'm telling you that I am the ultimate, being of love, then, there's a match there somewhere.
Excellent, right? Nice depiction of the approach, right, that Jesus had towards human desire. He receives it and he honors it, right? Responds to it. So very different, opposite path than what we're reading here with Nietzsche. So then the question is, right? Why did Christianity change from this kind of gospel, right, where human passions are celebrated, human beings are, right, seen, even Jesus is seen fully engaged with life, with the life's pleasures, with life's pain, right, really enter life completely in the Nietzschean sense, right? The life of Jesus is, for Nietzsche, the happy life, not the comfortable life, but the happy life. And so when did Christianity start to turn, right, into something else? And one of the reasons is the influence of Greek philosophy. Remember that Christianity was born during the time where the land of Israel was under the conquest of the Romans. And the dominant culture was not Roman, because they had no culture. It was Greek. Right? The Romans at the time was not Italy of the Renaissance. The Romans were barbarians who were just set on invading and conquering, right? They had no culture of their own. It was the Greek culture that still permeated the civilization at the time. And so Jesus is born and the writers of the Gospels, right? And later on Paul, right? One of the main apostles, born in this context of Greek culture. And what I am suspecting happened over the centuries is more and more Greek culture entered into the mindset. And one of the main ideas of Greek culture, which permeated Christianity, was this notion of dualism, right? Let me write this down. Dualism, the idea, I think, did we do Plato? No. We did Rumi, we did the cave, right? Did we do the cave? The story of the cave. Remember how there's two dimensions in the Greek? We talked about Plato, right? There's the corrupt material world, the cave, and then there's the spiritual realm, right, which is the pure world of the ideals, right? this entered Christianity. And from then on, we had in Christianity this dualistic thinking of the world is corrupt and what matters is heaven. Are you seeing the parallels between Platonic thought and Christian thought? Put your hand in the screen if you're following. Let me say it again. For Platonic thought, two worlds: the corrupt world of matter, where we are, and the pure world of the ideals, right? Christianity takes over, assimilates this idea, and begins talking also about two worlds, something which Jesus never talked about. Jesus only talked about this world, the kingdom now, right? Christianity begins talking about two worlds. Now, the corrupt world, the flesh, the material world, and then heaven, right? And so what Nietzsche is actually criticizing is not Christianity, but the Hellenization of Christianity. Let me write this down. Learn this new word. Hellenization of Christianity. Hellenistic culture is the same word as Greek culture. Hellenistic is another word for Greek, right? So when I'm talking about the Hellenization of Christianity, I'm talking about how Christianity became Greek, or how Greek-like, right? So what Nietzsche is really targeting is Plato, not Jesus. Are you following? Put your hand if you're with me, right? What he's not liking, this hatred of the world, this idea that we need to rise above the world, this is not coming from the teachings of Jesus. This is coming from the teachings of Plato, which infiltrated Christianity in the later centuries. Let me say it again. What Nietzsche is criticizing is not the Christ, it's Plato. Platonic teachings which infiltrated Christianity over the centuries and made it what it is today. This kind of nihilistic, life-hating form of life, right? Which in fact you do not find in the early Gospels. You don't have this attitude towards life and towards the world. Jesus is entitled, and for God's sake, he's incarnated in the world. There is no one closer to the world than Jesus, right? He has entered, penetrated the world. That's his point. That's his destiny, right? And so this idea that we need to separate from the world is absolutely opposite to the movement itself that Jesus made by penetrating the world and dwelling in the world, right? Which we ought to follow according to him, right? The goal of the Christian is not to separate, but to penetrate, right, the world. And this is really what the teachings of Christianity we have lost over time because of the Greek infiltration. Karuchi, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and maybe it's just, my opinion, but, I always saw Christ as a, the fact that he was man and God at the same time, says that he was able to live, with the perspective that we had and feel the things that we had. And he traveled with, with a group of humans. He didn't separate himself while he was on earth. He didn't, sit on a mountaintop and look down and, he walked amongst us.
Exactly.
And he showed people who he was, and he let them see, he saw people for who they were, and he let people see him for who he was. Exactly. And I think that is not just metaphor. I think there's a lot to be said for that,
Excellent, right? Absolutely, right? Jesus is someone who really entered the world in the Nietzschean sense, right? Nietzsche talks about us not being afraid of living life to the fullest, living the lowest, living the highest, living the bliss, the ecstasy, but also the terror and the pain. When you look at the life of Jesus, this is somebody who was not afraid of life or of death, right? Somebody who was really able to engage, right? And in a way, disciples of Christ are called to do that instead of separating and being aloof and being, like Pilate, washing their hands all day long, right? So that's the idea here that we're seeing, is that really, and in a way, Nietzsche is the one who provoked this reflection, right? We would never have really seen what happens in the Gospels had we not been through. Are you seeing how Nietzsche really, in a way, renewed our understanding of the Gospels, right? If Nietzsche hadn't been over here making a scene about Christianity, I don't think I would have gone back to the Gospels to look for the opposite, right? And I never would have met this kind of Jesus that is actually there. I would have continued to look at Christianity through the lens of Greek thought, had Nietzsche not, in a way, intervened. So always welcome these philosophers into your lives, right? Because they do clear up the vision, right? In a way, Nietzsche has allowed, at least on my part, if Nietzsche had not been there, I would have continued to follow Christianity in a Platonic way. I would never have seen the original texts for what they truly are. I would always be looking at everything through Platonic eyes. Okay, so I just wanted to give a quick response. This particular criticism is easier to respond to. The next one we'll do next week. It took me 10 years to really respond. So I'll take you on that journey till the end of the semester. The criticism of delusional is much harder to circumvent, and we'll talk about that next time. But for now, let's go briefly to Nietzsche's approach to the passions, the cultivation, right, that I talked about. Remember, versus cutting, he proposes cultivation. So there's 3 words he uses. Go back to the text, which is page 52, I guess. Yeah. Go to the last, go from the bottom, count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where you see spiritualize, beautify, deify. Are you there? Put your hand in the screen. Okay. All right. This is what Nietzsche is proposing, right? So Nietzsche, he says this, right? It never asks. So he's talking about the church again, bashing the church, saying the church combats the passion with excision, right? In every sense of the word, its practice, its cure is castration. We've talked about this, right? It never asks, and this is now Nietzsche's direction, right? New direction. How can one spiritualize, beautify, deify a desire? All right, let's talk about these 3. I'm going to look at these 3 as alternate way to deal with the passions. So spiritualize, number 2, beautify, and number 3, deify. Okay, let's look at spiritualization. Okay, so let's take let all of you think of a really strong passion that you are undergoing often. So some of us, it's anger. Some of us, it's lust. Some of us, it's gluttony, right? We all have one passion we struggle with, right? That is more powerful than us. So Christianity would just say, like, suppose you're a glutton, it would say, don't eat. Stop eating. Stop thinking about food, right? It doesn't work. So what would it mean to spiritualize if you were somebody who had anger problems or struggling with lust or you had struggling with gluttony? What would it mean to spiritualize your passion? Can anyone tell me? What does it mean to spiritualize a passion? Let's see if you can figure it out. Okay, Ahmad, go ahead.
I saw Karuchi's hand, so
Go ahead. I'll call on him. Go ahead first.
so I take it, instead of saying that eating is bad and looking down upon you eating to sustain yourself, you welcome it and say, hey, this is, or you be thankful for the food that you get, and you utter a prayer and sort of,
Yes, I see what you're saying, but Nietzsche wouldn't talk about prayer, would he? So how would you do it? So Karuchi, do you want to try your hand at that one?
I was along the same lines as Ahmad. I was going to say that, you could recognize that this is part of your humanity, and, maybe, you're not as strong with some things as you are with others, so that you could spiritualize it by bringing it to your faith and say, hey, can you help me out with this?
But Nietzsche, remember, doesn't believe
Right.
God.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Womp womp.
Jasper, help us.
I think it's to love your food.
Almost.
And then I think he spoke about something about contrasting it. Like you got to do something opposite to maintain that.
That's the second one. We're going to talk about that one in the Beautify. That's coming up. You're talking about balance, right? Spiritualization is different. Let's see. There's one more hand. Al-Hadai, save us.
I don't know, but I'm guessing the thing manages. Like, don't eat too much and don't eat little.
Can't hear you, Al-Hadai. Can you say that again? Yeah.
So basically, manage it. Like, don't eat too much.
You're in the number 2, beautify also, like Jasper. Let's see, Rosario, can you solve this problem?
Maybe you internalize it, like give it some meaning.
You're very close. Absolutely. Spiritualize, channel. right? Suppose you love food. You become a chef. Oh, now it's like all spiritualized, right? You make these amazing dishes for people. Suppose you struggle with anger. Become an activist, right? Now you're channeling your passion into something good. Suppose you struggle with lust. Get married. It'll all go away. The best way to calm yourself down, right? I'm kidding. Right? So do you see how he's talking about channeling, right? Channeling the passion and making it something higher, letting be the motor for something higher. That's the spiritualization, right? It's a way to channel it so that it gives rise to something higher than itself. It becomes just a motor that pushes you to do something amazing, right? Spiritual. Now, beautify, a lot of you are talking about, this is the idea of harmony, right? What is beautiful is what is harmonious in the Greek culture, right? If everything is in balance, then it's beautiful. If it's out of balance, ugly, right? So this is the idea of indulging in a desire with moderation. That way you beautify, you stay in moderation, you stay in harmony, everything is balanced, right? Let me just remind you of this, right? Beauty in the Greek culture is synonymous with harmony, balance, right? Something is beautiful if it is balanced. So if you're too tall, too short, your face is too big, or you want to be everything proportionate, right? And then for the Greek culture, that's beauty, right? So if you apply it to now this moral context of desires and passions, same idea. Nothing excessive, everything in balance. You have lust, balance. You have gluttony, balance, right? You have anger, balance, moderation. But like the Greeks say, right? Everything is allowed, but in moderation. That would be the Nietzschean path, right? Every passion has its day in the sun. Every passion should express itself, but you have to make it in moderation. You have to beautify it, right? Last one, to deify. What does it mean to deify a passion? What does it mean to deify? From the word deos, which means God or divine. What does it mean to deify a passion? No one dares. No one dares tell me what it is to deify a passion. You don't know? Okay, I'll tell you. Deify, to divinize, right? To make divine, make holy, right? In other words, to see our passions not as something corrupt, but as something holy and sacred and divine, right? Our passions is life itself flowing through us, right? Is the sacred pulse of life. There's something powerful and holy and divine about these urges we have, right? These forces that pull us into the world are themselves, for Nietzsche, to be celebrated as holy, as divine, as sacred, right? Instead of seeing them as corrupt, as demeaning, as part of our sinful nature like the church does, Nietzsche is saying, no, these are glorious, right? These forces within us are powerful life forces, right? We should celebrate them and honor them and, see the holiness in that passion. Everybody clear on the path of Nietzsche? Put your hand. Okay, great. All right. Next time, we're going to talk about delusional Christianity. And this is a tough one. We're going to spend the rest of the semester responding to Nietzsche on that one. It's difficult to, this one is difficult to respond to. It's a really, really difficult criticism, which actually applies to all religions, not just Christianity. Okay, any last questions? Great. Let me stop the recording.